Another week, another vlog. Hello everyone. Today I thought I'd talk to you about a particular research study that I'm super excited about. It's actually my favorite paper of last year. And I brought you out here to one of my favorite spots. It's actually where I come out pretty much most mornings when I run. This is kind of like my halfway point where I stop to catch breath and I can just look out and I can just be really calm and be super relaxed about everything. So for me, this is a spot where I can just think about the week. It's a spot that the environment is something that really helps me to be in a nice place, to plan out everything that I want to do for the week. And there's a reason why I'm telling you this. It's because this study that was released a few years ago actually talks about some of these elements. They're really important elements when we're talking about therapy. Now, last year I got to speak to Professor Jenny Downs, who was the lead author of the paper, and it was about children with Rett Syndrome. Now, Rett Syndrome is a rare disorder and it occurs in 1 in 9,000 live births in Western Australia. So every 2 years, 3 children are born with Rett Syndrome. But what you tend to see first is in the first 18 months or so is normal development. But these girls hit this point at 18 months where they see a change in their communication skills, they see a change in their hand skills and how it is that they walk. They might be more unsteady and have less balance. Now, this period of regression obviously is a very difficult time for families and for the children as they see their child change from who they had before in the previous 18 months. So it starts off this whole odyssey of just looking at what this could be, and it ultimately results in a genetic test that confirms that it is indeed Rett syndrome. Now, other things that you might see is maybe the onset of seizures. Some have gastrointestinal changes or breathing pattern changes. Sleep may be altered, and you might even see a scoliosis. And another thing that you might see is what we call hand stereotypies, where you have these stereotypical hand movements, very rhythmical, but for no real purpose. You might see ringing or writhing or flapping of the hands. Another hallmark feature that you do see is this really intensive eye contact, and they'll really look at people. And you can see how that could be a great advantage for communication down the track as well. So the question around all of this is what do you do about it? And this is where allied health and therapies really come into play. And this is why this study was so super exciting, because they really looked at the core of what could possibly change in children with Rett syndrome. Now, an interesting thing to know about Rett syndrome is that there's an alteration in this gene called MECP2. And MECP2 is like this master controller. It turns on and off genes within the body. And one of the genes that it influences is what we call brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Now, BDNF exists in all of us, and we think that MECP2 alteration in Rett syndrome actually affects this particular gene. And this gene's important because it stimulates this protein that develops and lives within our nerve cells. So it develops the coverings around our nerve. It also looks at the connections between the nerves as well, and that's a really important factor. So you can see why it's really interesting, and we seem to think that in children with Rett syndrome it is a reduced amount. But what we do know is BDNF is sensitive to exercise. So if we exercise, and this goes for all of us, hence the reason why I'm talking about exercise in my spot here, is we can change our BDNF levels. And when you're thinking about nerve cells, that's a really cool and important thing. So these researchers did some blood tests to look at BDNF levels, and they created an intervention for children with Rett syndrome largely based on the principles of motor learning, which is what we know so much from in cerebral palsy, because we know now so much more about how the brain changes, how it learns. And so it's not really just locked away just for cerebral palsy. We can apply it to other conditions that have this neurodevelopmental trajectory. So when you're thinking about that, you're thinking about being really goal-directed, really hands-off, creating an environment that's meaningful for the child. And the biggest thing that these guys did in their research was they did this thing called environmental enrichment. Probably my 2 most favorite words of all time. I love the term environmental enrichment. It applies to all of us. You know how for you sometimes, for you to do some work, you might need to make sure your room's set up really well. Part of it might be procrastination. I definitely experienced that. But I love nice settings and scenery that helps me to be in that place where I can best take in information. And it's no different for our children. If we can set up an environment that is most conducive for learning, that's exactly what we want. And in the neurodevelopmental condition, where we've seen loss of skills, that is even more important. That's why kindies are set up the way they are. They're friendly, they're fun, not too cluttered, but there's enough stimulation and sensation for the child to want to explore the environment themselves. And that's how you see therapy go beyond your doors. It's not just about therapy, it's about the environment that it goes into. So after this period of 6 months, they found huge results. Not only did gross motor skills improve by 8 points, and you only need 4 points for it to be a true change, they doubled that. They also saw 2 to 3-fold increase in BDNF levels. And that's never been seen before. So now we know there's this parallel. We can increase skills, but we're also seeing that real biological factor in the brain, in our body, that's also making a change. So the main take home here is it is possible to make these changes. There is so much hope out there. And if you do the right therapies at the right time, which is why finding the right therapies is so important, because you've got this real finite time to make these changes. And if you can make those changes, it's a life that's been affected, it's the family that's been affected. So find ways to be really active. Find environments that are conducive of learning. And that doesn't just go for children with Rett syndrome, I think it goes for a lot of us. So I hope that was really helpful for you today. I'm going to get on with it because it's going to get really hot soon. So I'll talk to you guys all again next week.